Thank you very much, Tommaso. Welcome everybody. Thank you very much for coming. My name is Simon Crompton. I'm the founder of permanentstyle.com, and for the past few years we've been running these symposium events, which has been a hugely enjoyable series. I think the thing that's going to be very different this evening is we normally have a group of craftsmen, shoemakers, tailors on stage who are wonderful.
Craftsmen too. We craft words, dude.
Okay, we now have craftsmen and media on stage instead. But I'm hoping it will be a really engaging discussion as a result. One thing I think is really interesting is that we have also a much broader range of experience here than we normally have. So we're normally talking to a bunch of classic menswear nerds about classic menswear things. We have on stage a broader range, both in terms of mainstream fashion as well as classic menswear, and also awareness of the women's wear things, streetwear as well as kind of classic menswear. So that makes it a much broader ranging discussion, I think. So very brief housekeeping things. We're going to talk, hopefully entertainingly, for about 35-40 minutes, and then we're going to have some questions afterwards. So please have questions ready. Normally it's a really fun part of the evening. After that's done, we're going to go outside and have some drinks, and then we're going to come back in for dinner, which should be fantastic. I'm just going to go around and introduce our speakers before we kick off. So we have the idea was to have a representative of lots of different types of media today, so different points of view. So on my right we have David Coggins, book writer, representing. Thank you. Next we have Daniel Pryce, better known as Garçon John, who is representing photography for the discussion. Next we have Kirkland, who runs a podcast called Blamo in the US. A very fast-growing, interesting area of media. We have myself, I guess I'm kind of representing blogs or something like that, social media in a way. We have Wei Koh, the founder of the Rake magazine, representing the dying industry of print media. And at the end we have Stubbs, stylist, writer, columnist for Financial Times in London. So I guess what I'd really like to get out of this evening is from everyone here and their different perspectives, get a view of how we think media right now is changing and what effects that's going to have in the next few years. And I thought a nice way to start maybe is maybe start with you, Tom, and say, you've been in this for quite a while. In the past 10 years, how have you seen what you do change?
Good evening. Largely, I'd say it sounds terrible, but fashion's driven by credits in magazines previously, and now it seems to be driven by sort of Instagram credits on celebrity. And we spend a great deal of our time working out who's wearing what, at which party and which red carpet, compared to how things were previously composed in a more controlled atmosphere, environment of the magazine. So that's been huge. Now we funnel into a supposed moment. Is vast and sometimes challenging and random sometimes as well.
So it's become much more focused on a particular time. Like you were saying earlier, when you're doing red carpet things, suddenly there's just one shot that becomes incredibly important and all the celebrity cares about is how many likes that particular shot gets. That's all the kind of brands care about as well.
Exactly, the brands are driving this, and they're shifting their budgets away from print media towards dressing celebrities. The resources involved are massive, and depending on who it is, it impacts big time on what you can borrow and what you have to sort of cobble together.
And is that because it's so much easier to see the results on social media? You see how many likes something gets instantly, whereas if it's in a print magazine, they've got a readership that they state, but seeing the results of it is much harder.
Well, I think it's yet to be seen the effect this has had, but everyone's brands are a bit scared, but it gives an immediate impression of an endorsement, an association. And people are keen to just cash in on that. We're not sure yet. It's kind of a little bit, not exactly the Wild West, but we're in a new period where people are finding out what really counts. And print media is losing the battle in some respects with what's fueling an ad dollar. They'd rather have the celebrity wearing it on the whole.
By the way, so why is print media not dead?
Well, I guess I should preface this by saying that, hi, I'm Wei. My mother will tell you I'm an idiot, so anything I say basically is just my own opinion. It's probably quite stupid anyway. But the point is that I feel that print is essentially dead in its sort of traditional format, both as a medium, but also based on the mechanics behind print, right? So everyone knows that basically print works in the following way. The way you accrue revenue from print is through advertising, right? So there's all these big glamorous brands and they give you money, and as a result you have to write about them. And the more you are compelled to write about them, the more you destroy your voice, the singularity of your voice, because you're not writing about the things that you really want to write about. So then it becomes a balancing game where you're trying to write about the stuff that you like while still appeasing the advertisers, right? You guys get that, right? But the problem is today is that print has essentially lost its relevance. And I you know, sort of, if anyone here is in print, I mean, I don't want to sort of make this a really depressing moment, but essentially you're not going to have a job in 2 to 3 years. So you got to figure out what is it that you're going to do. So we were very lucky. Sorry, that's a bit off.
I was going to say, I don't even know my department is at the FT. We just do what we believe in. So
sure.
Weirdly, we've not lost our advertisers yet.
Yes.
So,
no, you're doing very well, and congratulations. But a lot of magazines are struggling with this. But the point is also the consumers got too smart for this as well, right? And maybe social media and its more positive connotation has allowed people to understand this, right? It's like to sort of force feed the same sort of crap that you find in every single shopping mall in the world down the throat of the consumer and tell them it's exclusive or luxurious. Right? I mean, come on. But no, everyone knows it's not true. You know, you want to take, for example, okay, you guys guessed, right? There's a specific reference from a specific brand of a bag, right? That rhymes with Reedy bag. In Galerie Lafayette, they were selling those during the sort of peak times. They were selling 500 bags a day. That's not luxury, dude. Right? Luxury is what's created by Lorenzo Schiafinelli, for example, something that's done with a great deal of heart and craft and soul. Right? So, okay, anyway, back to the whole idea about print being dead. We were very fortunate. Again, nothing I do is based on any intelligence. It's usually because I'm quite lucky. But we were fortunate that I accidentally stumbled into e-commerce a couple of years ago. And e-commerce has suddenly given us a relevance that we never had before. E-commerce from the perspective of brands, for example, makes us seem interesting, sexy, dynamic, and youthful. But more than that, e-commerce has given us an independence from advertiser-driven revenue because we now have e-commerce-driven revenue. It has also given us the capacity to champion brands that would otherwise be difficult to champion because they're too small or they don't have advertising budgets. But interestingly, big brands have also cottoned on to what we're doing and they want to participate in that. The great thing about this now is that we get to say, I'm sorry dude, but you know, we just can't work together, right? Like I love your gold-plated, eagle-headed belt buckles and I think they're awesome with certain people, but it's just not for us, right? And then that's been really important. More important, the other thing that's really good about it too is from a business perspective. When I used to tell my Uber driver that I was in print, right? The Uber driver would be like, oh, right? But now when I tell my Uber driver that I'm in e-commerce, he's like, wow, that's awesome. Because e-commerce, from a business perspective also, if you try to value a print company today, no one's going to give you any kind of valuation at all. But if you try to value an e-commerce company today, those are sort of the most sexy and exciting valuations today. So for any of you guys that are in print today, right, you have the capacity to be the most relevant person in the future because you're great storytellers. Tom's an amazing storyteller. David's a great storyteller as well. And in addition to that, you have knowledge, you have wit, you have capacity, you have voice. Use those things to champion things that you offer people to sell. And when my journalists asked me, well, what about our editorial integrity? I responded with the following. It's like, dude, what takes more editorial integrity? To accept a business class ticket to a beautiful destination, stay in a suite, go eat at a 3-Michelin star restaurant, and then have to write about a product that you don't really care about, but you accepted to sort of like deal with the devil to sort of, you know, wine and dine you. Or to say, I, Dave, or Tom, or Wei, love this so much that I'm putting my reputation on the line and saying that you should absolutely buy this. Because the moment I recommend something to you that sucks, I've destroyed that confidence you have in me, I've destroyed the trust that you have in me, and then I have no voice anymore. I don't have your trust anymore. So.
I mean, I think there's a theme that we'll carry on touching on this evening, that a lot of these kind of roles are kind of coming together and merging.
Right.
You know, in the you were a magazine, you were a media outlet.
Yes.
You know, then now you're suddenly becoming a shop because you have e-commerce.
Yes.
You've got your own branded products you're selling in your shops. You're basically a brand now as well. So all those kind of traditional roles are all kind of merging into one. And I think when we were talking about this earlier, I think one of the things that's quite hard is to work out what's the new paradigm. Where does this settle? Because it's really hard to know how any of this kind of works out in the end. You know? I mean, Jeremy, what's your perspective as someone who's, you know, been working in a fairly new medium, but then also, you know, you've only been doing this and, you know, working on commercially for a year or two, right? So how do you see the kind of the commercial side of kind of what you're doing?
I think, like, being in a podcast world or, say, print, a lot of advertisers want to find out, like, you know, like the bigger ones are like, what's their return on investment, right? And like how do they convert? But I think it's really tough to figure some of these things out. But like, as you know, when I started and I hit a threshold to do advertising, a company that sells advertising reached out to me and they're like, hey, we represent Squarespace and Casper mattresses, and I was like, that's, I mean, like every podcast is for Squarespace and Casper, like that doesn't really do anything. And what I think has been good is specifically with something like a podcast, like people that like menswear, thankfully know a bit about my podcast, but people that are like really into, say, something completely opposite have no idea what it is. But so the medium that I'm communicating on is so narrow that I'm able to actually attract advertisers with lower budgets, but also have the ability to have their voice heard. And like Wei was saying, like I can do advertisements for brands I actually like. Like, yes, I do like Birdwell, swim shorts. I have owned them for over 10 years. That is an advertisement, and I do own them. And I think having the integrity in trying to do an advertisement, because yes, I also have a 6-month-old daughter that I need to take care of. But being able to have that integrity, I feel it resonates more with listeners because they know I actually care about it and like it. And I feel like everyone wins because when you were talking about print, people's BS tolerance is really, like, people can see through stuff quick. Like, yeah, you're not into it, And so I think having integrity in what you're also trying to sell is really important. And I'm not saying that people don't, but I think that's the benefit I have, at least with the podcast world.
And presumably that works as a lovely model to a certain stage though as well. Like, if you become so big that you're advertising lots of things,
yeah,
or you need to get to a certain level for investment, suddenly it's like, yeah, I need to kind of take some advertisement with someone I haven't owned for the last kind of 10 years.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the curse that I may be putting myself under, is like, I might be at a point where I'm like totally just gonna plateau. Like, well, I'm gonna have to compromise my integrity here. It's like, I have, 2 people who make, they don't make a lot of money, but they get paid for working for the podcast. And so I'm like, okay, if I want to try to earn more, I'm going to have to figure something out. And I think, I don't know, we'll have to go into consulting or something, but yeah, it's tough. But I think you have to find some way to maybe not plateau, so we'll see.
Jonathan, do you have those kind of commercial decisions or kind of compromises you have to make in some of the things you get involved with as well?
Yes, there are definitely compromises. I think, as a photographer, your primary communication is an image, obviously, and so the obvious way of communicating that in 2018 is Instagram. Everyone uses it, and everyone asks me, the first question is, what's your Instagram? If they're wanting to see my work, whether that's a client or someone I just meet in general and they know that I'm a photographer. Something that I am very careful about, and a line I tread carefully, is the dynamic between being a photographer or being an influencer. If you have a significant number of followers or a following of some sort, you get approached to do things like sponsored posts or go on press trips, and I do engage in that. Often there are great things, like you said, brands that I like anyway, or places I wanted to go anyway, hotels I wanted to stay in already. I'm very conscious of not accepting everything because, I could do 10 sponsored posts a month, and your whole feed would be filled with sponsored posts.
So you're aware that you just have to keep that line in your mind all the time, because there's a certain amount of credibility that you can almost kind of use up if you could just spend it in a few months. Get a whole lot of those things, but then no one will kind of believe in you again.
Well, yes, exactly. But then I think the other thing that's interesting is looking at other people. Very high engagement, and people don't seem to care, particularly young people don't seem to care currently about credibility. And so for me, just personally speaking, this is a long-term game plan.
Yeah.
Okay, so for sure, if you make the personal decision to make a lot of money in a very short period of time, I think you can do that, and I know people that have done that, and that's excellent if they want to do that. But I don't see how in another year or so, a brand or someone will want to engage on that level if your whole feed is filled with I'm wearing sportswear this day, I like tailoring this day, and yeah, okay, we're diverse as humans, but it's disingenuous, you know.
I think there's also there's the two aspects of that. There's the credibility point where someone trusts you for recommending in a particular category, a particular thing. If suddenly you're recommending a hotel or something else, it's like, you know nothing about hotels, you just happen to have gone to that hotel. And also so much of the kind of digital media now is really rewards niche, all the time. So if you kind of, it's so easy, or we can organise something like this for basically, as I said, classical menswear nerds, because we can all kind of get together on Instagram, we can communicate it very easily, and everyone knows what's going on, and people can watch this live and understand it, and that can work really well with digital. But if you start kind of trying to do absolutely everything, then you're kind of competing with everybody that's actually much more niche than you, I guess.
That's definitely true, and I think we have passed that hump. I think a couple years ago, trying to be everything to everyone was working. It's definitely not now. Any client that tells me about the people they're looking for in terms of influencers that they want to be involved in a campaign or something, it's always people who have under 100,000 followers because they're seen as more interesting, more engaged, like up and coming, rather than someone that has over 1 million that are
Like
doing
saturated, basically, they can't take seriously anymore.
Yeah.
David, I know this is not...
Thank God I don't have 1 million followers. Very reassured.
David, I know you're very, very big on social media, but how do you deal with it? Do you have a view on this?
My heart is racing with all this real talk about the future of media. I hope don't come back here in 10 years and we're all consultants. I mean, in some ways, I think it's complicated navigating the media landscape, terrible phrase, but in another way, it's simple in the sense that, we all want to connect to something that tells a good story. I mean, just being in this place, not just Florence, but this room, run by this family of cooks is an amazing thing, and I think people respond to it. And when I respond to something strongly, whether it's tailoring or a writer or whomever it is, a place, I try to communicate that to people, and that can happen through a book, an article, through social media. And I think, hopefully, people respond to my enthusiasm, the way I respond to other people's enthusiasm, and the way I respond to skill and tradition and all the things that I think people in this room care about. And so that's going to change, right? Like how that form that it takes will change, and that can be in a podcast or a video or whatever it is. And I think we have to be smart enough, no matter how much you love literature, that sometimes you might be, making a short video. You can't be too precious about these things. But at the same time, I do think we need to not forget the things that we cared about in the first place. And if all we're trying to do is get some weird amount of clicks, I think the click is like a really misunderstood thing, right? It's easy to measure, but what it actually does is a lot more vague. And maybe I like those types of ambiguities, but I kind of respond to people who maybe do something that isn't the most efficient, easily measurable thing. Nothing good can be measured. Nothing important can be measured by a click. I mean, that's what passion and quality and creativity are, all those more ephemeral things. And so you try to communicate that in any way you can, and I hope I can do that in however I may do that. And I think that the people here respond to that, and the people on this stage can try to provide that.
So I guess that kind of passion comes from being much more that kind of niche person, as you said, covering one area and really understanding that story, really to tell it really well, so supports that.
Well, I think in some way it's that I'm older, so I like the fact that I didn't grow up with social media, and I think that's important to me, that I can be maybe inefficient, like I can leave and go fishing, or I can leave and travel on my own and maybe try to find something and come back and then tell that story in some way. I mean, niche, I don't want to think too much about these things, and that I think there are always going to be people who are extreme experts, and then I also think there are going to be people that help put things into some sort of context. I think I'm more of a context person, and I like that. I like how somebody dressed. What does it tell me about that man? What does it tell me about how he sees the world? What does it tell me about how he wants the world to be? I mean, that to me is why I love clothes. I think the people, when I see people dressed, especially in Pitti, in Florence, in this old city, it's, of course there's luxury and all sorts of things that everyone wants to do and get their clicks and names and all the rest of it, but to me it's like, and I hate the word aspirational, but I do like the idea of men, and of course women, but men typically here, who want the world to be a certain way, and I think we all respond to that to a certain extent.
And please, everyone, do jump in if you have any thoughts as well. Don't just leave it to me to bounce things around. But in my head, the way it seems to make sense to me is there's so many different things you could be doing and seem to do, and there's so many ways you could communicate that I have to keep it in my head. What is the one thing that I do that either I care about the most or I think I'm best at, or people look to me for, and other stuff is just marketing. So if you say you might do video or something else, but the thing you care about most is producing books or is writing. That doesn't mean you won't do video, but that's just a way of getting people to understand about the books, right? You shouldn't confuse those two things.
I mean, for me, I communicate in words typically, and but I can do that on a microphone too if I have to. And I think it's that we all have to take our obsessions and make them understandable to the public. I think that's a real challenge. And how do we do that? I mean, we do it in forums like this. We do that. It can be in a blog post. It can be in any different way. But I think we're really communicating, right? And so, and we need, and I think everyone here has evolved the language for them to do that. Visual language, it could be audio, it can be all these different ways. I mean, it's amazing to me, since I did Jeremy's podcast about a year ago, was it? And people have come up to me and they heard that, young men, and the intimacy that they had with that medium towards Jeremy. They're like, he's so great, isn't he? It's like, yes, he is. His questions were very insightful. That was exciting to me. I mean, and I told him that, and it's nice to know that people are still feeling like the intensity we want them to feel through these new mediums. So that gave me some sort of hope, I think, about these things.
Well, I guess there's a lot in common as well in that both of them are very long form media, right? You still takes a lot of engagement to listen to your podcast, normally like an hour.
Yeah,
it's a long time to sit down and listen to stuff.
It is. It's long, and I think it's really intimate. Like when you read a book, right? You're reading it alone, and it's your brain. You're reading it, and like when you listen to a podcast, it's in your ear, or in most cases, it's a very intimate, almost like long sale if you're even trying to be transactional. And so I think when you have that, because everything, all the stuff that we have in common is obviously, print may be going down or whatever you want to say, but like storytelling isn't.
Absolutely.
Like storytelling is the most important thing, and that's what people want to connect with. So it's just different levels of intimacy within that storytelling. So
anybody want to tell that story quickly in an image or tell it in a long
Exactly.
form, you just got to pick the right medium for it.
yeah, and I think people kind of pick and choose what they want, and if someone's like going to the gym or driving to work for some reason, yeah, they would. That's why
That's
radio
when I listen
is
to your
so
podcast. When I'm pumping iron, that's what I listen to.
You're just like, man, this close.
Do you pump a lot of iron?
Yes.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, actually,
Please.
if I may say that, it's sorry to be so ominous initially, but I really do feel that print in some ways is not completely that it just needs to evolve, right? So the whole idea behind the Rake was, how do you create a magazine that is more relevant in an era where internet and social media dominance is so proliferate? And so the idea was to create a magazine that was basically the antithesis to all of that, right? So you wanted to have really long format journalism, really splashy and glorious sort of photo shoots. You want to champion literateness about it, because there's people out there that still want to read. You wanted to create something that had a sense of permanence to it, and that became a collectible and had an emotional quality in the same way the Bible has an emotional quality. So I think that actually these worlds coexist really well. Maybe you're not going to read the Rake as you're pumping iron in the gym. And I would suggest that you probably don't. I think Nick Phelps would be really upset if he found out that you were, doing squats while you're. But you would sort of read it in a moment of quiet, sort of genuflection, which is essentially for me getting really hammered on my couch, smoking a cigar, with my dog by my side, and really sort of just reveling in the glorious words written by yourself.
You put on the internet
or Tom, or David, or whoever, And I think it's very charming in that way.
Well, I was just saying, Wei actually puts those bits on the internet as well, then he was a dog on his cigar. But I think the print media is already evolving. It's about, I love what David was saying, in the sort of human aspect of it, but a big part of style and fashion is effectively sort of entertainment, and that is the human bit that brings that. And there's already sections, I work for GQ, and there's already a section that's totally non-ad driven. It's about personalities, people saying quite mental stuff about, business cards being sort of out of date, and how it's about just having sort of outrageous slogans and how speedos are the way forward. And it's not ad driven. That's already happening. And back to the entertainment thing. Being into clothes was so much about how people react to them. And it's deadly serious. It's also quite comedic, some of it. And the interaction between shop assistants and what have you when you're buying it and people you see out and about is huge. So bits of the internet that are going to manage to capture that are going to be successful and cash it on the internet, cash it on the entertainment bit. I think we shouldn't lose sight of that. Style is part of the entertainment industry in a way.
And it sounds like we're circling around the fact that you still sort of place for all those different types of media. Effectively, you've got entertainment, you've got things which is much more kind of long form read, where you're really trying to get in depth to these kind of things. And it's very easy to think that because one is growing really fast, that it's dominating everything else. But actually, there's a role for all of those.
Well, if it's not entertaining, people just log off. We were talking about earlier on, it's like the Gong Show. If people just won't be there anymore. So it's more kind of egalitarian, but it's very immediate. You find out straight away. You were discussing that before, weren't you?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of one of the things I guess that's quite hard and makes you want to respond to people in that way. Is that if you're reading, one of David's books, he doesn't see the data when people stop reading after chapter 3 or kind of get bored and put it down and go roll the
I
dice.
see
Right?
it.
No one puts it
No, it
down.
just says, the introduction was really good. That's the famous thing. Love the introduction.
I mean, Jeremy, sorry.
Well, no, I think you're going to balance these things into like immediate, like sugar highs, right? That's like clicks, short videos, and those things are important. And some people are really good at them, and some people aren't. And I would be like not one of those people. And I think that's fine. I think it's good. Like audience is important, but I also think like there are curious men. Men by nature want to research things and want to know more about them. And I'm sure there are plenty of people here who have been on every single page of a Savile Row Taylor's website trying to find every last thing about it, and there's never enough there. And it's almost like they've designed them to be like totally inadequate, and websites seem to be like 12 years behind the times. It's sort of charming, right? And I'm not the only person who's done that. There are plenty of people who do that, and men want to know all sorts of things. And so, yes, they want this immediate, like, I will follow freakishly, like, Twitter when the Academy Awards are going on the red carpet just to see the reactions. Like, I don't want to actually see the dresses, I want the reaction. It's just sort of funnier to me in imagining them. So people do want that, like, that sugar high, but then they also want to know real stories, and men will always want that. And that doesn't mean that you're going to write a just long piece about the history of the smoking jacket, but you know what? Plenty of people will read that. And so I think we all need to navigate this balance between somebody looking good in something and like this instant, response to the way celebrities are, but also a little.
I also like the fact that.
Well, I completely agree, and men are obsessed by knowledge because they're scared by the world. It's bewildering. They can't control it. Bits of knowledge, becoming an expert on something, gives you a little bit of control over something. So read up on watches until you're a nerd. And you think you might control the world. You won't. You're going to surrender quickly. But bits of knowledge, being an expert, seems to sort of make you feel stronger in the world. So they're always going to be obsessed by it. Go away.
No, I just wanted to say that I think one of the kind of cool things about social media is the fact that it's kind of democratized style, right? Like in the old days, it was always either movie stars or whatever models styled by someone else that were definitive of style. But real style, and I had a great conversation about this with my friend Mark Cho when we were in Hong Kong, is I think to quote Proust, and hopefully I'm not making this up, is a manifestation of a world that we all see but no one else sees, right? It's the externalization of that. And I think the guy that essentially basically created this capacity for democratization is Scott, right? Like he's sitting right there. No, and he basically created an entire medium. And I remember speaking to Scott, and he said, like, yeah, he would come to PT, and he would be like, yeah, but it's really interesting for him to see that this is a person's real style. This is how he actually dresses. This is how he lives. This is how he interacts with the world, rather than trying to present an image. And I think you got to give it to him, and he's completely revolutionized it.
I'm sorry, Scott has a blog of some sort?
Yes, apparently it's quite popular.
That site, for me, before I ever came here, it was amazing to see photos of older Italian men.
Yes.
I mean, I got more out of some pity. It was before all of this, whatever it's kind of evolved into. Someone else can speak on that, but seeing the way those men dressed was so natural and elegant, and so it was so wonderful to me. It was better than 1,000 Ralph Lauren campaigns or anything else. It was just, and seeing that was really something. And I mean, I still have those photos in a folder on my computer all those years later. I mean, it's an absolutely wonderful thing, and it's fun to come here now. And yes, there's going to be something you have to kind of filter through to get to that thing, but that thing is still there. And I think there are always going to be people who carry that thing forward. And I think our challenge is how do we celebrate those people and those things and craftsmen or whoever it is, in all the various ways we do it. And I think that we have to believe that that still matters.
Yeah.
And that's the key to me. If we start thinking we're just gonna be driven by even good big brands that we like, but if we lose sight of the actual thing that drives that passion, you're always gonna fail somehow, or it's gonna run out at some point because you've lost the connection to it.
Yeah, if you remember how that inspired you, then you think, well, I just need to do that in a different way. You know, I mean, the kind of democracy is almost a nice metaphor for it, because it kind of opened the floodgates to everybody then having a view on social media. Now everybody's an influencer and everyone has a role in everything, which, you know, as 6 people that perhaps are slightly more, you know, influence than others, kind of the last we wanted to give it to, you know, have everybody feel that they have a voice and it's as useful as everybody else's, right?
I think they should means test influencers at any point. Should burst into the flat, ask them 10 questions if they're not just off the influencer schedule. I'm up for supporting that if anyone wants to help me.
My favorite social influencers are the ones where they've written this great inspirational message about overcoming sort of like failure or, you know, resolving great conflict, and then it's a picture of someone's ass, right? I just what's up with that? You know? Simon, do you post those?
Yeah.
It's mostly me that pumping that iron,
Yes.
and so then I have to post a picture of my ass to show how many squats I've been doing. Yeah, exactly. While reading Nick. Jonathan, how do you see, I mean, do you think that, you said earlier that people ask you kind of what's your account and how many followers you are. Is it really hard to make a division between being an influencer and a photographer? Do you think to be a successful photographer today you have to have that kind of influence as well?
No, I mean, there's countless really incredible photographers that are doing great work, a lot for print, and campaigns that don't have a lot of followers, and I admire their work a lot. And they're the sort of people I follow, actually, they've got 1,000 followers, do you know?
Are they slightly older generations sometimes, or is it? Oh, really?
Not
Okay.
always.
So I would have thought it'd be hard to start, to kind of get known out there and stuff and get people to follow you without that kind of help with the social media.
Yeah, but there's also an interesting dichotomy now where it's not cool to have a lot of followers. So, you know, having a lot of followers gets you work, obviously, and that's great, but, you know, you don't want to run around telling everyone I've got a lot of followers because it's naff, to use a 90s word. But yeah, I mean, to add to the storytelling idea, I almost feel reluctant to talk just about Instagram because I feel like it's like the calling card, and so such a small percentage of the work that I do or a photographer does or any of us do, you know. But I'm going to talk about Instagram. So on Instagram, the most engaging things for me, you know, talking about storytelling, sort of adding to this, I'm not a writer, is when I write a lot about the situation, the conversation with the person, something that happened in the moment that goes along with the photo. Also last season I started writing stories, the non-fiction stories of silly, funny, coincidental things that happened in my day, and engagement went crazy high by comparison to just posting photographs. And so it's just about lots of touch points to me, you know, having the stories which are more personal and funny, having a photograph which is engaging and relatable. You know, if I share studio photography that I've shot for a client, if you just want to look at likes, you know, all that means anything other than, you know, hitting a button, but it's way lower than something where people can imagine themselves in that situation. And also, yeah, like on my blog, I'm meeting all these interesting people, so I started interviewing them, and it's a long form interview. I just write what they wrote, and I don't really care that it's not internet friendly. Like, if you're someone who looks on Wikipedia, like I had a cold a couple months ago and I sat for 4 days looking up the history of the London transport system, you know, and the YouTube videos and all this stuff, you know. If you're that type of person, like that's the sort of person I want to look at the photographs and read about the guy. And also I'm talking about doing a book at the moment, and we're choosing guys as subjects who are not
obvious ones from that point of view.
I'm not
More
trying to
interesting.
get limelight, and not, you know, they're like a farmer or someone who just has amazing style. And also talking about this thing with Scott, you know, finding these people and pushing them forward. It's really who they are. This is their life, you know, and it's not like I was describing before, you know, a brand did exercise to show followers that you a certain style. Yeah.
Is it, in some ways it kind of feels like a lot of this stuff should be quite predictable, because you see, and on books, for example, David, if I'm right, everyone was predicting like the death of print and books a few years ago, and that everything was going to be all e-readers and all be digital. And of course that was never going to happen. What happens is you get a lot of that kind of stuff, and then you push up to the point where people understand actually what they value about books. And now they go, oh, hang on, I remember, I value a book when it's a beautiful thing that I sit down and read, that it's not just a and easy being just to pick something up. And then, you know, I like vinyl now as well, then you realise that books are never going to die, it's just going to kind of push back to the point where it's just the stuff you really value about it.
Yeah, I think there's something where, like, if you're making a magazine or a book or anything that seems people are telling you are behind the times, like, you better believe in that thing, right? You better try to make a book that's good in the realm of books, because you're not going to convert people to like it who don't like that sort of thing anyway.
Yeah.
And so if you're making a magazine like the Rake, like, put it on good paper, because there's some feeling that you can't even quantify about what it feels like to hold a good magazine. We all know what that magazine is. That's the one you don't want to get rid of, right? That's the one you don't put in the recycling. That's the one you keep on your table, because it has something more meaningful to us that we could never quantify. And so if you're going to make a book and go down with the ship, which I'm kind of proud to do, like make a book that is the way you want to do it. Don't try to do it in a way that's like, this is the book for people who don't like books, or this is the suit for people who don't wear suits. I mean, if we're going to get down to it, I mean, you can tell immediately when you go into some men's store and it's like, well, we're trying to fill a category. I mean, is there anything worse than that? For people who care about such things, obviously there are way worse things than that. But somehow it's like particularly demoralizing. Like, I want you to like ties if you're making ties. I don't want you to just be like, well, should we have some ties? Like, and that's why, like, I love people who believe in what they do, whatever it is, whether it's like a butcher or something else. And I think that type of belief is communicated in, like, all the important things in ways we can't quantify.
Yeah, and to me, it's I think I'm just an incredible optimist. I ever always see the positive things, but like, this seems amazing to me, because basically what you're doing is you're just refining away all the crap and getting down to the stuff that you really love.
Yes.
And it's only the people that really love the books and they're going to buy the books they really, really love and get into. And it's the same with all these kind of media as well, right? All the kind of stuff you didn't care about, you lose, because people don't care about it enough to buy it, to engage with it, to understand it. But if you do care, then that is absolutely there. And it's just valuing that real high engagement, right?
It's a mission that kind of unites us all. I mean, what you do, what all of us do, what Scott does, what Mark or George does in terms of their retail business. And it's important, right? Because we now exist in an era where essentially money and taste have diverged in polar opposition, right? Like, if you look at how people with money are spending their money, like, for example, I went to the south of France for the first time, and I thought it was going to be like a Slim Aaron's photograph, right? And it was just like, I went to the Grand Hotel de Cap Ferrat, and it was just all, I mean, like, you know, Russian ballers with like hookers and orange Lamborghinis, you know? And not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's not what I was expecting, right? And we
Just like Scott Fitzgerald.
No, it wasn't.
You drove a Lamborghini.
I was quite depressed, actually. I think I spent the majority of my time in the Grand Hotel de Cap Ferrat, curled up in a ball in my room weeping. And I think that what unites us here, what's wonderful about Pity and what's wonderful about championing artisanship and singularity of vision, whether it be what Vincent Jean does or what you did, or certainly what you do, Simon, is that we all have a specific purpose, which is to try to reunite taste and affluence, right?
Thanks, Wade. One, I think area I'd be interested to touch on, given the kind of a bit more broader experience, as I said, than kind of normal, is I guess how some of the big fashion houses and brands might respond to all these kind of things. So Tom, for example, how do you see some of the big fashion brands responding to this today? It feels like sometimes with the influence stuff, they just kind of panic and throw money at absolutely everything, and then like a year later they go, no, that's a bad idea. They panic and throw money at something else.
Well, that's already happening with there's sort of ambassadors, then one influencers. They've got, you know, the influencer budget's already getting cut. But I mean, I'm a little bit alarmed by the number of, you know, ambassadors that are patrolling our fashion weeks, and you know, there's still good stuff going on in London Fashion Week, exciting, creative stuff. But there are people just turning up in a different look, paid to, you know, and you know, I've seen some quite cynical party moves where it's almost no party going on, but just against the wall, the pat moment, the brand, and it's almost coming apart at the seams. Like there's nothing in the background, and it's tangible. People know that, so I'm not sure it's going. We need some, you know, new blood, some new spunkiness in there. Don't know where it's going to come from, but you know,
it's going to come from all of us.
Right,
we're very spunky.
Yeah. There's got to be some. It's lacking in creativity, this stuff. So, but a hunger will develop for some new creativity. This is the place for it.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure we're necessarily the solution, Simon. I'm just presiding over the end of it. Do you know what I mean? It's the end of our world.
Yeah. But it does seem like those trends are happening so quickly. I'm surprised that people don't see that ambassador is a thing, but that's going to die in a year or two. And actually, you know, everyone else is playing a longer game, like you were saying earlier, David. Actually, is getting more reward. You know,
so ambassador, you're really spoiling this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Nice line. That's the pull quote.
That is.
Sorry, David, were you going to say something?
I mean, mean, it's so funny because I'm so fascinated by these sorts of things. Like, I was like a company or respond to somebody who like believes in what they do and how they do it. And you can tell instantly with this like step and repeat at the party or this ambassador or whatever, it's like someone who's like they're trying to solve a problem they don't understand in a way they don't know how to do it. And like you just can tell, like the way you can tell like on a first date that it's not going to happen. Something I specialize in. And so this like it's really sad to see these companies not tell their story. It sounds easier than it is. Of course it's hard, but like just do worthwhile things. Do the things they would like anyway. If you try to do something that you don't, you're like, well, we don't understand social media, so like either hire the coolest 20-year-old kid from Tokyo and just like do something strange and weird and fun, or like do it just the way you would do it anyway, and like do it in a way that's honest to you. I think it's the gap between honesty and like chasing after something. And if you do it honest and in an anachronistic way, like that's fine. Like who cares if someone's a little bit like behind the times, or like I'm sure we all go to restaurants that we love. Of course you want to go to some like really avant-garde place, but you go to a place that you love where the menu hasn't changed in 10 years, you know what you want without looking at the menu. It's like fantastic. You know, like that, like there is room in everyone's life for that sort of thing. And I think companies are like, well, I read an article in the Financial Times, I need to do this, I read it. And it's like, well, if you're making your decisions that way, you better be very good at who you hire and who you trust.
Jeremy, do you have any view on this from more, I'm looking at the one person here who knows something about streetwear possibly, and knows how that's kind of, because that seems like often that world to me, again, know nothing about it, whatever, seems almost the most cynical a lot of the time, in that you get brands like Supreme, for example, that are kind of having, it's all about that hype, and it's all about really controlling the supplies, you can increase that. It seems so sort of cynical. Is that fair, or is that just kind of a classical menswear guy kind of getting angry at it?
I mean, a lot of that stuff is more focused on like cultural identity and like being onto something that's new. You know, like with Supreme, it's funny that, you know, everyone's like, oh man, Supreme is this big brand. They're not doing anything different that they've done in the past 20 years. I mean, yes, they've collaborated with like Louis Vuitton, but like the drop thing has happened since I think 1998. So it was like 4 years into their company that they started doing these drops, you know, and now, you know, they announced Eddie Celine is going to be doing drops, you know, and a lot of brands, yeah, it was just a way to control inventory. Like Jebbia worked at Stussy, and they didn't have the cash flow to get product, so they could just pay for things as it came. And the weird thing is like that became a trend because everyone just wanted to be Supreme, so they started copying what they were doing. But I think all of that, I would say everyone in this room is a little bit self-conscious about how they're perceived. We want to be accepted, we want to be liked, it's why we're wearing what we're wearing. I'm sitting here and I'm like, geez, Kirkland, like, don't say anything stupid, don't, you know? And so that is the whole point of why, in most cases, why we're wearing the clothes that we're wearing anyway. And Supreme was just an example that lets someone feel like they're in the club. You know, it's why there's fake Supreme all over Italy. So I think it's being a part of that, and it's easier to be a part of it when you're wearing something that's, say, streetwear than it is tailoring, only because it doesn't say Cifanelli on my back. You have to be so smart that you see that shoulder and you get it.
That makes you feel really, really smart though, right?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
That's fantastic.
I mean, it's like Patek Philippe in a nutshell, right? Because you're like, not many people know what it is, but when they see it, they're like, okay. So, I mean, in terms of streetwear, yeah, it's just being accepted and having that identity. But please, anyone else, tag along. I'm by no means.
No, well, I'm also kind of conscious we're going to have dinner in a bit, and we're running a little bit short of time, but I want to give everyone in the crowd the opportunity to ask a question if they want. I don't know if do we have mobile mics, or are we just going to...
I got wireless.
Yeah? Do you mind, Jeremy?
Yeah.
We'll share mine if you want. Does someone mind maybe rolling the mic?
Bueller?
Thank you, Jamie. Any questions? And please, just if you stick your hand up and then maybe wait for the mic, just to make sure we have it. Everyone in the room can hear, and we have it on video as well. Questions? Hey. Thanks, Mark.
So Wei, you talked earlier about, as a print media person, you've basically gone into retail. And I was actually having an interesting conversation with the Hodinkee guys a while back, where they were saying, you know, this is how people have to be now. If you do content, it really helps to also be doing commercial product alongside that. But conversely, if you're a shop, you need content too.
Yes.
So you're, as a shop, turning into a media person.
Yes.
What do you think comes after that? Because eventually this is going to turn into a big homogenous mess. So how do you differentiate what?
Yes, well, yes and no. I mean, I totally agree with you, and all the sort of smart retailers now are developing editorial divisions, right? Or purchasing editorial divisions. I mean, at the same time, and I was on a train with Ben from Hodinky, if you guys know who that is, and we were coming back from a Paddock Philippe press trip, and we had that conversation about how we need to start moving into retail because we're so dependent on advertising that we have no freedom to actually write what we want. But I think, very honestly, I think that the future is not related so much to the traditional perception of competition. Like, I don't think it's about like me competing versus you or whoever. I actually really think it's much more about community. And I think that they're all very mutually supportive. Like the best retailers in the world that have an editorial voice, which you clearly do, versus a magazine that has moved into e-commerce. But if we're both buzzing about coherence raincoats, but we've both done different versions of them, they actually become collectible in their own right. But I feel that this convergence is happening. I mean, bear in mind also that when Mr. Porter and Net-a-Porter became successful, the first thing that they launched were print entities, right? Because they wanted to have that legitimacy, they wanted to have that emotion. And I think that you basically, if you come at it doesn't matter which direction you come at it from, you need both for the future.
Well, I think that's really a smart thing because I think so many industries are where, like, you're so aware of how you're perceived and what you think you're good at, and it makes it harder to get outside of that place, right? So when you start your podcast, so, that you're like, oh, you might be self-conscious about it, but that's like part of the thing that's going to happen. And I think the irony is that the audience is ready for that already. They aren't going to make such a big deal when it's the Rake interview series with whatever emerging thinkers. Like people are ready for that. They're not going to hold your feet to the flames the way you think you are. It's just hard to start doing that thing.
Is the honesty point you made earlier, is that key to it? Like, as long as you do it with that, you honestly care about what you're doing, mate. It doesn't feel cynical to anyone that's going to do
Exactly.
it.
If it's interesting to you, and you already have an audience or a connection to people, and you start doing the thing that you respond to, or you want to, I mean, I think that probably is, in a way, how Jeremy started. I can't speak for him, but it's like talking to people, different types of people in the men's fashion, and now beyond, that like people cared about it. If he starts doing it with musicians or other things, he's already got this audience. They're going to go with him into that place too. And then if he collects it into a book, or then he does these other things, like all of that will make sense. I think companies have to allow themselves to evolve, but stay true to the thing they care about, but then they can go into different media. And I don't think that it's not really going to upset the audience nearly as much as people think. I mean, it's heartbreaking to me that Ralph Lauren doesn't have a magazine. Like, and they used to, and now they don't. And like, if anyone should have one, it would be good at it. It would be them, and then that could evolve into something else.
They should have a magazine. They should have hotels.
Yeah,
They've
exactly.
got restaurants. I mean, they should create an entire universe.
Consultant. I see a future in consultancy. Yes.
But is it really, to kind of Mark's point, is it going to become homogenous where everyone has everything? Like for example, yourself and Jonathan are the people I think least likely to have e-commerce and start selling stuff consistently. Do you think that's inevitable at all? And Jonathan, would you ever see a point where you are taking things, you just have to be selling things at the same time, you have to buy the products in your photos because that's what everyone expects, and it's weird if you don't?
I think it's different for me than everyone else. I think it would definitely detract from the photography if I started selling products. I mean, I sell books, I've got books, and I've got, sell prints. But
maybe even you have the photo in the comments underneath or whatever, just have links where you can go and buy it, and then it immediately go through, and then you get that kind of commercial side of it as well.
I mean, it's an option. In some ways, I feel like I'm a bit terribly old-fashioned the way I look at these things. I don't really want to do that as an individual, not just because it would be a pain to set it up, but because I want to be an image maker and a storyteller just on that. And maybe you did the right thing for sure. Not maybe you did. You did, and maybe I should be looking to you more of like, maybe open up to different channels for the future and be a sort of jet-setting photographer who creates this new thing where I'm able to have a brand and a business and I go e-commerce and all this stuff. But no, and also
Become Simon Crompton.
Say, what's that?
Actually, because that's a good question to ask Simon as well.
Right.
I mean, how do you feel? Because you created an incredible site. That's one of the references, right? What was also really cool about your site was when you were very honest, but you also sell product as well.
Yeah.
How do you find that balance, and will you expand more?
Yeah, so I guess my view was that I don't think you can do all of those things and do them really well. So my view is that I'm happy to sell product,
but I can't have and from my view and what I do, and which may be different to you, but I don't think I can sell 5 different brands of shorts and then write an article that honestly reviews the best shorts out there.
Sure.
Because frankly, I'm clearly got a bias to kind of preference the ones I want to be doing.
Yes.
So if I'm doing too many categories, and I don't think that works. I don't think that's going to feel honest for me and what I've built up. That might be different to somebody else, but I don't think that could work for me. So I do kind of collaborations or e-commerce stuff where I kind of feel like it's around the edge. It's very, very tiny. It's not really competing with anybody. It's a weird little freakish thing that really annoys me. I always wanted to buy like this particular Oxford shirting cloth, and no one does it, and it pisses me off. So if you have the influence or the connections to go and kind of develop it, that's amazing. That's a great thing to do. But if you'll start doing that much more mainstream things, competing with everybody you're writing about, I think that's different.
I think related to that question as to what Mark mentioned was, will it become a big homogenous mess? Well, listen, again, this is also democratic, right? Like everyone has the capacity and understands that the future relates to some degree between the merger of entertainment and commerce. So the question then is, what do you do with that understanding, right? You've got to be good, right? It's got the things that you recommend have to be genuinely tasteful. The things that you discover have to be genuinely extraordinary, because people will just tune off. As Tom likes to put it, they'll just hit the gong and they'll find someone else, because no one's going to listen to you if you compromise yourself. But there's great opportunity within that as well. Yeah.
I was going to say all boring.
Or boring.
We should have given people gongs this evening. I mean, I don't know if we would have been gonged off by now, but I don't know if we did.
I would definitely have been gonged up by now.
Yeah.
I would have gonged myself up.
We've got a different website altogether.
Okay. One more question maybe before we have to go? Yes.
Just to add up on print media, I just want to ask, with regards to, obviously, print media, for it to work, is marketing and advertising. So basically, how do you bridge the gap between advertising or marketing versus authenticity? Because we look at magazines right now, a lot of them, well, should I say maybe from where I come from, they've lost that authenticity.
Where do you come from, sorry?
South Africa.
Okay, thank you.
So the magazines now, when we look at them, they're no longer speaking about, let's say, fashion. They are more into the lifestyle of celebrities and everything. So instead of us buying a magazine to read about a brand or people that are in the fashion industry, we're now reading about a musician who's just doing great things, and he's just, in the music industry. So obviously, because of he's a musician, so he's making numbers for the magazine. He's making, obviously the magazine's going to be bought because of that guy. He's on the cover page. But now, where is the authenticity of the magazine going now?
And if you don't mind, I can ask a sort of a question back in that I guess what we're trying to say, maybe in a very hopeful way, is that the problem there is not the fact they're doing everything. The problem is they're doing it in a very inauthentic way. And you read about a musician and you feel they don't really care, they don't know about the music, they don't care about the music, it doesn't feel that you're getting anything out of that. If you felt that everything in that magazine felt much more authentic and insightful and genuine, would that make a difference?
Yeah.
Would they be more engaged then?
Yeah, because if you see, those are magazines where back then we used to know that when you open the magazine, everything you see there is all about the fashion industry. That's what the magazine is all made up for. So now it's just about maybe 5%, 10% with regards to fashion, obviously through advertising of different brands. But other than that, we also want to know about people in the fashion industry. We read about them. I want to read about whoever that's in the, whether it's a stylist or a designer or a tailor. At least let me get to know that person rather than me getting to know somebody who's not in the fashion industry. He might start dressing well, but obviously because of those brands are paying him for marketing purposes.
Okay, thank you. I think that's very useful to have the view of the consumer as well, and the kind of same stuff we're talking about. I think that we probably run out of time, but Tom, do you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, his outfit you just spoke about is wicked, sort of tailoring outfit, one of the best in the room. So they pick it. Your look. Bang on.
Can I quickly respond to that?
Yeah, please.
The reason why magazines are like that is because, I grew up loving magazines, and one of my favorite magazines was Interview magazine, right? It had original art covers by Warhol, had celebrities or interesting, people, novelists interviewing other interesting people, and it was great. But they just had to announce that, they're folding, right? And so every great magazine that I used to love has basically gone out of business. And there's so much terror in the magazine industry that that's going to happen to them too, that they're reacting in the most sort of, I don't know, brutalist and sort of knee-jerk way possible, which is to stuff their pages with exactly the type of content you're talking about, because they think that's going to appeal to advertisers that are trying to appeal to millennials, right? And what you have in the end of the day is a magazine equivalent of fast food. And when I eat McDonald's, not that it happens often, I feel sick afterwards. When you flip through most of those magazines, you feel kind of ill afterwards. And the whole idea for the Rake, for example, was to make you feel uplifted by the end of the journey, to read things that were inspiring, and to read things about extraordinary men who were not fashionable or most likely dead, you know, but led these incredible lives, and at the end of it made you feel a little bit inspired to lead your life that way as well. Right? But in order to assure that future, in order for me to be able to produce that magazine for the future, I'd have to go to e-commerce.
Cool. I mean, frankly, I could sit here and chat all evening. I think this is amazing. But we have to stop. I think we are going to go, I think, and have some drinks outside in a second, then come back for dinner, which is going to be amazing. I can already see them starting to prepare dinner through the window, which is fantastic. I know in a second we're going to have our sponsors come on stage and just kind of talk a second. I want to have a quick shout out, because they are basically the reason that we could all be here in this amazing place. To Stefano Bemer Shoes. To Thomas Mason Fabrics. And to Fox Brothers Cloth. Thank you very much.